Welcome back to Too Hot for TV. We're the podcast that looks at all things expanded universe. Now, last week, you will have heard me and Mr. Artfully Liam talk all about the comics of Millennium and indeed the brilliant documentary After the Millennium. And I'm once again joined by Liam. So say hello, Liam.
Hello to the listeners that believe I am still called Liam. So hello.
And this time, we're also joined by one of the executive producers of the brilliant documentary After the Millennium, which we talked about last week. It's Troy Foreman. Troy, welcome.
Brilliant documentary. I like that. I like that. Hello, everyone.
We start well, Troy. You know, we start smooth. It's like a smooth coffee blend. We're starting well.
No, thank you so much for joining us. We said a lot of very lovely things about your documentary last week. We had a great time watching it. It's a brilliant documentary, and I hope that anybody who listened to it that hadn't seen the documentary goes and finds it and watches it, because it's a proper love letter to the show. But I wanted to start off and just to ask you, like, how did you discover Millennium? Because I remember it getting a big push at the time after the sort of the initial X-Files mania and things like that, but it didn't make it to the UK for quite a while. So when did you sort of pick up on the show?
Well, I was always a Lance Henriksen fan. First and foremost, he's like my favorite actor. And for some people who are old school, back in the day, we used to get this magazine called TV Guide every week. And every fall issue had a big fall issue where it would talk about the upcoming shows for the new fall season. And one of the shows it mentioned was Millennium. It was a nice write-up about the show. And I couldn't have been more excited because, again, I'm a big Lance fan. And, of course, Chris Carter was involved. So they had me from the get-go. So that's how I found out about the show.
Amazing. And so did the show grab you right from episode one? What was the appeal of the show and the character of Frank Black?
Well, first of all, I'm into that kind of the serial killer kind of stuff. I'm into that. I watch a lot of true crime documentaries. So this show was like right up my alley. And I remember watching the pilot, and after the pilot went off the air, I sat there in my chair for about 5 or 10 minutes and didn't say anything. Yeah. I was just blown away by the pilot. And I remember reaching out to a couple of friends the following day, and they were like, "You're excited about a show about serial killers? What the hell is wrong with you?"
We've all been there.
But yeah, the show grabbed me from moment one. I thought the pilot, to this day, I still think the pilot's one of the greatest episodes of television I've ever seen.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a brilliant pilot and a great in to set up the series. So you're behind the Back to Frank Black movement. So could you tell us a little bit about how that got started?
Well, honestly, I didn't start it. Back in 2008, I was doing a pop culture podcast, and I realized that the anniversary of Millennium was coming up, so I wanted to do something about the show since I love the show so much. And I just started researching or looking for fans who were fans of the show as well. And I came across Back to Frank Black. I think they'd been running for about a year, maybe a little less. So I just reached out to one of the guys from the fan campaign, a guy named James McLean, and I invited him to come on the podcast. And he and I did a podcast together talking about the show, and realized we had some really good chemistry and played off each other really well. And I said, "Hey, I'm thinking about starting a Millennium podcast. Would you like to be a co-host or just come on every once in a while?" And that's how it started. And from there, I ended up joining the campaign.
Amazing. And so your podcast looked at the entire series of Millennium.
Well, initially we had talked about doing an episode by episode kind of thing. But I thought to myself, so many podcasts have done that before. Not even Millennium podcasts, but just podcasts have done that before in general. So we just decided to do whatever came our way, whatever we thought about talking about, we would do. Every once in a while, we would do an episode review, but mostly we wanted to interview the cast and crew. Yeah. That was our big thing.
And so what cast and crew did you get involved on the podcast?
Oh, God, we've had everybody on the podcast. I think the very first interview we did was with, and I'm not going to remember his name. He played the judge in season 1.
Oh.
The early episodes of season 1.
Marshall Bell.
Yes. He was one of the first podcasts we did, and he was really, really cool. And then from there, because, I had never done anything like this before, like doing interviews or, reaching out to agents and publicists. I knew nothing about that stuff, but you kind of learn as you go. So the better I got at doing that, the better people we got on the show. So we've had pretty much everyone on the podcast except Terry O'Quinn, CCH Pounder, and like a couple other, but all the main people we've had on the show.
Mm-hmm. And so from there, I guess the evolution from the podcast of meeting those people, you know, covering the width and breadth of the show led to this documentary. Tell me a little bit more about how that came about and sort of the inception of it.
Well, actually, the podcast actually led to the book, Back to
Right.
Frank Black, A Return to Chris Carter's Millennium.
There you go,
Um,
lads.
Yeah, there you go. That's it. Yeah. The podcast led to that book. We'd been doing the campaign for a while, and we knew from day one it was going to be an uphill battle to get Fox to consider bringing the show back. So we knew it was going to be a difficult thing. So we were kind of winding down the campaign because you can only do so much. You know what I mean? Millennium was never X-Files. X-Files is just, on another level. And unfortunately, Millennium never reached that level, but, there are hardcore fans like us out there who still love the show. So we were kind of winding down, and I thought to myself, what could we do to leave with a bang? And initially, we came up with doing a comic book. So we started working on that, and then that kind of morphed into me and James talking, and we're like, we have a ton of interviews here. Let's do something with those interviews. And we ended up meeting Brian A. Dixon and Adam Chamberlain, who were running a independent book company called Fourth Horseman Press. And they were big fans. Brian used to run the website Millennial Abyss. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Back in the day. That was great.
Yeah, Brian ran that website. So, we ended up talking to those guys and ended up coming up with the idea for the book. So we did the book and released it around 2013. And all the money we made on that book went to charity, Lance's favorite charity, Children of the Night. And from there, I thought that was going to be it. But then again, me being a nerd that I am, I was like, there's something else we can do. We can still do something else pretty big. And that's when I came up with the idea for the documentary after watching the Firefly documentary. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Yeah.
And then there was a couple other documentaries I watched, and I'm like, those are cool fan documentaries, but they're really fan documentaries, if that makes sense. They're a little corny.
Yeah.
They didn't really have that broad stream kind of mainstream crossover.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was a lot of people going, oh my God, I love Firefly. It's so great. Okay, I get it. You love Firefly, but I really want to listen to the cast and them talk about the show kind of thing. And that's when I came up with the idea for the documentary, and I took it from there.
Great. And so do you have a background in filmmaking or video production or anything like
Nope. Zero.
that? So how do you go about sort of, you've got this idea of this thing you want to do, but you've got the knowledge and you've got the will to do it. But how do you go about assembling a documentary with no sort of previous experience?
I picked up a book called Documentaries for Dummies. No.
I think I've got that in its second printing.
The great thing about, reaching out to these publicists and agents, you get to know these people, and you get to, you talk to them off and on, and every once in a while they'll have a client that you want to kind of talk to outside of Millennium. And there was a couple people I reached out to that were producers and had done documentaries, and I just started picking their brains. And I just started doing research. And I researched for like a year and some change, learning about documentaries, making documentaries, the business behind it, the money, all the craziness. And I was like, I think we can do this. And that's when I started assembling the team. I initially reached out to this director, who I was pretty excited about because he had a little bit of juice behind him. He had some really pretty decent credits on IMDb. And after about 2 months of doing pre-prep for the doc, I realized that he was more into meeting people from the show so he could push some of his own projects.
Right.
So I kind of just stepped away from him. And then I came across a guy named Jason Morris, who had done a Millennium, web series called Millennium Apocalypse.
Where he got his wife to play Jordan.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I reached out to him and I said, hey, man, I'm thinking about doing a documentary. It seems that you're a fan of the show, which he obviously was. And then he and I just started talking. And over the years, I'd met so many fans from the show that I reached out to a couple guys. Andrew Shelton, who was a guy who I would always see enter our contest and, retweet our stuff. I reached out to him. And then Jason knew a guy named Matthew Gatsos, who did the music, the score for the doc. And then there was another guy named Matthew Ingalls who had sent in the cover of Back to Frank Black is Matthew Ingalls' artwork. And I just remember seeing that and I was like, we're going to use this for something later on down the road. So I just kept it to myself and I just put it away. And then perfect, it was the perfect cover for the book.
Absolutely.
So that's the genesis of how everything got started.
And then presumably, like, you'd spoken to a lot of the contributors before on the podcast. Did you have like a sort of hit list of who you definitely had to get involved, who you'd like to get involved, and piece together the puzzle and the story that way?
I thought, we thought if we can't get the big three, then I don't know if there's really a reason to do the doc. So that was Lance, Chris, and Frank.
Absolutely.
We couldn't get those three. I didn't think the doc was worth doing. But the minute I reached out to them, they immediately all came back to me and said, absolutely. And whatever you need from us, you just let us know.
Awesome. Where do you think Millennium sits in the careers of the big three? And the documentary, it's sort of warts and all. That's not to say it was like a terrible production or anything like that, but the show evolves and there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that means the show has to evolve that you cover. But like, how do you think they feel about the show in the grand sort of span of their careers?
I got to tell you, to be honest, everyone we've ever talked to about this show, it's been a highlight in their career. Everyone. It's interesting. A lot of times we talk to people on the podcast and, they've done other things besides Millennium. So of course we want to talk about their other stuff and promote anything they got coming up, but they always want to bring it back to Millennium. It was a special time for them. And especially for Lance. Lance loved that character, Frank Black. And he literally told us, he called me up one day and he's like, hey man, how's the documentary going? And I'm like, we're still in pre-production. He's like, whatever you need from me, you just call me.
Fantastic.
If I'm available, I'm going to help you. I want to get this off the ground because I want more people to know about Frank Black in the show.
What I liked about the documentary, Troy, was that I think we both can agree, and Dylan from the episodes that he's seen as well, that the show very much evolves over the 3 seasons. In fact, I would almost go to say it's effectively 3 different television productions that are kind of
100%.
under the idea of it. And I did like the way that in the documentary you mirrored that story. So the individual chapters to do with the show, so your initial stuff, and of course the redux that you did with Bill Smitrovich at the beginning, compared that to the stuff with Claire towards the end. And that I found the documentary actually mirrored the journey of the show. And what I was wondering was, when you were doing that journey, what did you rediscover about your relationship with Millennium that you might not have realized before that kind of detailed look at it? Maybe areas that the podcast hadn't mined.
I think it's just a simple fact that it just made me appreciate the show even more, talking with everyone from the show. And you're right about the 3 seasons being 3 different like chapters in a book, kind of. And we wanted to mirror that, and you hit it 100%. We wanted to mirror that with the documentary. So if we've picked certain select people
Absolutely.
from each season of the series. I wish we could have had more. There were some more people we wanted to talk to, but I think we kind of covered that. And the fact that you say that makes me feel pretty good that we actually did that.
I know that in my discussion with Dylan, he actually noticed going into the documentary raw, and he was like, well, this is quite interesting how we've actually got licensed clips from 20th century in the documentary, as composed to a lot of kind of contemporaneous documentaries at the time. The only one I can think of that had that sort of access to the original source material, as it was the Ira Stephen Bear Deep Space Nine one that I think was done about 2018, 2019. But again, that was mainly affiliated with cast and crew. So I think it's kind of very much a testament to their trust and belief in you, Jason, and the others on the project, that you had access to that source material, because I do think it adds to the production.
I'll be honest with you. When we initially started putting this together, we were like, yeah, but really cool to have some clips in the show and da-da-da. And I was like, okay, let me reach out to Fox Legal and see what they say, what it would cost to do something like that. So, of course, over the years, I've got my little birdies at Fox. I had my little birdies, so I reached out to a couple people, and they put me in touch with the legal department. And they sent me this document. And they were saying, okay, so if you want to use 10 seconds of a clip from the show, it's going to cost you this much. If you want to use a still from the show, it's going to cost you this much. And let's just say one still costs more than what we put into the doc. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
It was expensive. It was super expensive. So we kind of got depressed.
Yeah.
And I was like, what about fair use? Is there anything we can do with fair use? So we reached out to a lawyer who ended up being a lawyer for the documentary. Okay. And he explained to us fair use and what we could possibly do. So we had to only use a certain amount of the clips from the show. So if you notice, they're real short clips.
Yeah, very much so.
Initially, our clips were longer, but we couldn't do that because of fair use. So clips are really short, but I still think they add to what the documentary was all about.
Absolutely. I think that actually works to its betterment, because you're effectively using those short punctuations to illustrate what the principals are saying on screen at the time.
Yeah.
Do Fox have an official viewpoint on the documentary?
Not heard anything from Fox.
Okay.
It's interesting because I know they know we exist, because there's been multiple times over the years where they've emailed, someone from Fox has emailed me and said, can you guys stop sending letters to Fox about bringing Millennium back? Can you stop doing this? Can you stop doing this? And we've never really gotten in any kind of trouble with Fox. I think one time they told us to take something down. But other than that, we've really hadn't had any issues with Fox, and I've heard nothing from them about the doc. But again, we hired a lawyer, a really good lawyer, and he went through the doc like multiple times and said, this is safe to put out there. You guys should be okay. Blah blah. So, yeah.
I guess when it's sort of unofficial, they can't be seen to sort of condone it, because it opens too many floodgates for other things that perhaps people who wouldn't take the care that you've taken. But at the same time, when it's not officially licensed, so they can't wave the flag about it. But people in Fox must have seen it and seen it as the sort of love letter to the show that it is, I think.
Well, thank you for saying that, because we were really conscious about not overstepping with the doc, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And putting something out there respectful to the cast and crew, but also being mindful of Fox and the legal ramifications and stuff like that, taking advantage of. Because we really could have done a lot more, but we chose, we don't want to go down that road. We want to end up dealing with Fox or whoever owns the show at this time. I think it's Disney now. But yeah, we were really, aware of that when we did the doc.
It did strike me as quite entertaining, because looking at what you were allowed to, quote unquote, by litigation, kind of incorporate into the documentary, and you look at contemporaneous of that now with the issues that, we touched upon in the doc and that we've seen since, about why the show isn't on streaming for a larger audience. And I suspect, looking into what was kind of said explicitly and implicitly in the doc, that it is to do with a lot of licensing stuff, that the heavy use of music and stuff inside the show. I mean, I can think of several Morgan and Wong episodes that completely orbit around the use of a Bobby Darin track, or, it's all, the music's almost another character in it.
Yeah, the big hurdle has been music.
Right.
That's the big hurdle. I do know years ago, I had some birdies at Fox, and I know there was a meeting they had, the executives, and they were talking about some of their franchises.
Okay.
And I know they had brought Millennium up as possibly maybe do a reboot or bring it back, or I know there was talk about that show, LA Law, and a couple other shows. And for some reason, it just didn't go anywhere after that. I know they let La La Land Records license the music to the show, so they released 2 sets of scores from Mark Snow. I know they did that, but yeah, I know there was talk about Millennium years ago about doing something, but it just kind of fell off from what I was told. That's
a shame. Do you think there are more stories to be told in that universe? Do you think, as you say, be it a reboot, we looked at the comic series, that, there's scope for, I guess, audio plays, all sorts of things, or bringing back the show, or a different version, a continuation? Do you think there's more scope to tell stories in the Millennium universe?
Absolutely. And if you talk to, when we talk to Clea has always said, Lance and I, we've always discussed, Clea's deep in the Millennium group, and she's actually helping Frank Black, and there's definitely stories there. And also there could be a story where Jordan, now, because we know she has some kind of ability, Jordan could be in the Millennium or working for the FBI, and Lance could be like her mentor or whatever. There's still tons of stories. And even Chris Carter told me that. He's like, what bugs me about Carter is, like, he told me, he's like, hey man, I know how to bring the show back. And I'm like, really? Well, what are you gonna do? He's like, yeah, I'm not gonna tell you. He goes, but I know exactly how I would bring the show back. And he goes, there's more stories to tell. So absolutely.
Amazing. So back to the doc, was it important to you to sort of make this accessible for someone who's perhaps not too familiar with Millennium in terms of telling that story? Because you mentioned earlier there's lots of documentaries that are quite fanish, And there's always a danger, I think, as fans, we've all got this gene to go, oh, I want to concentrate on this specific theme in this episode and this, what happened with the making of that episode. But was it important to go, we need to get the whole series and we need to tell a good story at the heart of it that can appeal to anybody?
Yeah, it was really difficult to walk that line to please the hardcore fans, but also have a doc that could bring in new fans and not ruin too much about the show.
Mm.
It was hard to walk that line. We had a writer, Joe Madre, who was the writer of the doc. It was interesting. We had an idea where we wanted to go. We did all our interviews. We were happy with the interviews. Jason and I sit down, start watching the interviews, and we're like, crap, now we got to come up with the narrative. We didn't really think about that at the beginning. Shit, what are we going to do? And Joe Madre comes in, who helped Lance co-write his autobiography, Not Bad for Human. And Joe's just an incredible writer. And he came in and he just took what we had and he put it all together and made it something accessible to the new people, but also hopefully a love letter to the hardcore fans. So I'm hoping we walk that tightrope. But there are some people who say we didn't. Some people think we did. I mean, what are you going to do? We tried to do our best. What are you going to do?
I just wanted to follow on from what Dylan's question was there and say, were there for you any heartbreaking personal omissions that you thought, that's great, we got that, it's just not going to go. It just sits outside of the narrative. Stuff that you really sit there and you thought, man, that's heartbreaking, but it doesn't work.
Not really.
Okay.
I think we got what we wanted. I'm hoping people who are new to the show will come in and watch it and go, oh, wow, that seems like a pretty freaking cool show. Let's go out and, well, good luck finding the DVDs. Let's go out and see if we can find it somewhere, a borrow from a friend of ours. I don't think there was anything that we missed. I don't think. There's people that we didn't get in the doc that we'd love to have in the doc, unfortunately, but schedules didn't work out. We only had a short window to shoot interviews, and unfortunately, schedules didn't work out.
Well, I'm someone that's relatively new to Millennium, and I found it a very accessible documentary and got me excited to watch more of the show. So it definitely works on that level. And I know Liam is a hardcore fan and it works for him too. So I think you've trod that line perfectly.
Well, that makes us feel good then.
It was really difficult trying to give Dylan a certain selection of episodes. So that showed the dexterity of the show without kind of getting him lost in all of like the mythology and the milieu. So, your man kind of jumped from Gehenna to somehow Satan got behind me, to show that, and he was sitting there, he was messaging me going, this show can do anything. It's fucking amazing.
Well, Dylan, let me ask you a quick question. What did you think of the pilot when you watched it?
I thought it was an amazing bit of television. And I think the pilot is something that I think I saw at the time. I was just like, okay, this sets up everything the show wants to be. It's mysterious, it's dark. You get Frank, you get his home life, and you're like, okay. I mean, it's something that I took away from the documentary. Lance says, "Where's the warmth?" or something like that in the script, and they go, "The yellow."
Where's
house.
the light? Where's the light?
Where's the light? Yeah, exactly. And that was something that I pulled straight from that first episode of like they moved to this yellow house, and I'm like, okay, so the home life is going to sort of be the sort of withdrawal from the darkness of the episodes, but it's like. It's such a brilliant pilot, and like I defy anybody to watch that and not want to watch more of the show. It's just like, I mean, I keep saying brilliant, but that's all I can say. And while I've jumped around for the purposes of my own podcast and things like that, I am going to sit down and do the whole run of Millennium.
Oh yeah, you should. Yeah, definitely.
I have warned him, Troy, how hard it's going to be to get the DVDs.
Yeah.
I've got my ways. Don't worry.
Okay.
How long did it take you to shoot, edit, write? Because I know you sort of wrote it in after you'd done the interviews. How long did it take to sort of from pre-production through to the end of post-production on the documentary?
I think it took about a little over about a year to do everything. The interview section was pretty interesting because the great thing about the show is either the cast members were in the LA area or they were in Vancouver.
Right.
So we only had two places to actually go. The only other interview outside of that was when we interviewed John Kenneth Muir. I flew down to North Carolina for like a day to shoot his interview. But yeah, it took about a year. It's interesting when Jason and I were going through this. Jason would get the notes. He would make a cut. He'd send it back to us. We'd watch it again. He'd we'd make notes, send it back to him. He'd do another cut. And there was one point where he said to me, he's like, man, he goes, I love the show, but I'm getting kind of tired of it right now. Constantly cutting and watching this and watching clips and he's like, I'm kind of getting tired of the show right now. We all kind of got a little burnt out, but once we saw the final project, we were like, okay, I think we did something pretty cool here for guys who've never done a documentary before.
That passion translates, actually. And as you said, Troy, you want to really find like it's a groundswell between it is a fan documentary, but it's not a documentary pitched for fans. It's very inclusive. And I think you tell a greater story there, not about just the show, but about where television was in the 1990s at that point as well. Because I look back on it now and I think, well, I struggle to think of a time where a creator would be given such narrative latitude to do something like Millennium. It was in the wake of Fincher's Seven, before the Mindhunter Redux. And to do something that dark on effectively one of the big four networks, I can't think of a time since that a creator's had that much latitude, really.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, he got all that juice from the X-Files, and they were happy to reach out to him and say, hey, can you come up with something else? It's interesting, that first season, if you're not prepared for it, that's a dark, dark season of television.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, that show would fit into today's television landscape, no problem. But back then, that was a hard watch for a lot of people. And I think that's what kind of hurt the show moving forward was that, I mean, I love the first season. I think it's brilliant, but it's dark.
Yeah. Do you know, I find with the X-Files, you can sit there, maybe watch 2 or 3 of them on the go, enjoy it. With Millennium, I really soak it in. I can only watch one at a time. I can't sit there and watch something like Luminary and then go off and do 2 or 3 more episodes after that. It kind of needs time to percolate. And I think the documentary does a very good job of that. It allows you to marinate in the different types of stories of the show. I just have a vivid memory of that first season and how, cynical and kind of world weary with the Yellow House as the beacon of light and hope. And then watching the beginning and the end, and all of a sudden we're talking about comets and Doug Hutchinson's got a stick-on beard. And it's just, you're sitting there going, wow, this is a totally new take on it. Totally. I can imagine for you, what that sort of watching that live, as a viewer, as you were going through it and seeing that evolution, because you came to it live at the time, didn't you?
Yeah, I watched it from the very first episode live. Yeah, every week, every Friday.
Mm. It was really hard to get here. It aired on one of the main 4 networks, ITV, and it was like Sunday night at 10 o'clock, and they heavily trailed it, as you know, from the creator of the X-Files. And after about 2 or 3 weeks of people being, thrown into furnace ovens and, having their eyes and lips kind of sewn shut, gradually this broadcast time, Troy, got later and later in the evening. And by the time we got to like the judge, I think it was something like 1:45 in the morning.
I think that's a lot because the X-Files is all about what you don't see. But with Millennium, it's sort of, I guess Carter's got this confidence from the X-Files that he's going to go, right, I'm going to go out there and show you the sort of graphic nature of what we're dealing with here. And I think, which, again, you've got to differentiate it because you don't want it to be like a watered down X-Files or something like that. You've got to give the show its own identity and its own stamp, which, again, you get from the pilot straight away.
I think the thing about the X-Files and Millennium is, the X-Files, nothing against the show. I thought it was a great show, but it was about conspiracies and aliens and, all this kind of stuff. Millennium was way more grounded.
Yeah.
And it was based in actual fear. Like, hey, my next door neighbor could be some kind of psycho. I could talk to him, everything's cool, and then he's going out killing people and sewing their eyes shut. And it was more grounded. And it's like, wow, this is really terrifying because this can actually really happen.
Here's an interesting one, Troy. Do you find, because I know I certainly do, that the show has gained in cultural relevance now in 2026 on its 30th anniversary in a way that perhaps the X-Files hasn't? Because you touched upon, folk stories and supernatural there. But because Millennium is so earthy and so grounded in fear, I find actually in the world that we live in now, it's a terrible shame it's not still available because it is so relevant to today's world.
100%. 100%. And it's interesting with the news of the reboot of the X-Files. And I was talking to some friends about this the other day, and Frank Spotness said this one day in a podcast: nostalgia can be a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
You know, the X Files coming back is great. Mulder and Scully, that dynamic, the conspiracy stuff was great, but that's kind of played out right now, and I don't think something like that is going to work
Yeah.
in 2026. It might, but I don't think so. So, but Millennium is just something that you hear about the atrocities that happen in that show in real life all the time. You know what I mean? So it's still a relevant type show to me to this day and into the future.
Yeah.
I think it will be interesting to see what the X-Files reboot does.
I'm stoked about it.
How lucky are we that we've got Ryan Coogler doing? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think because conspiracy theories were very fringe back in the 90s, whereas conspiracy theories have sort of gone mainstream now.
Mm.
Whether that is to the detriment of society or not is another podcast elsewhere. But I think now with sort of the access to information we have, be that information correct or not, there is something really interesting to be done with the X-Files, and I'm sure they'll tap into that. So yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yep, you and me both.
Yeah. I can only imagine the relevant fears and kind of worries and concerns that it's going to kind of preoccupy itself in 2026. The only thing I've seen, Troy, is a very brief thing in Deadline where they did a character breakdown for various bits and pieces for and it kind of seems to be orbiting around some sort of missing girl and kind of like folklore of like the Native Americans or something like that. So I kind of think that's a very interesting route to go down, because that's what really struck me with Sinners.
Mhm.
And what Kugler did with the kind of the cultural kind of shift post World War II of race relations in 50s America. I think that could be tapped into something quite spectacular.
Yeah, I'm really stoked about it. I think he's the right person to do it. I'm just hoping. Again, I'm not a massive X Files fan. I like the show, but I'm hoping fans who love the X Files give him a chance and give the show a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. Back to the documentary. So what was the rollout of the documentary? Did you do festivals and things like that first? How did you get it in front of people?
Yeah, so the first thing we did a thing where we tried to raise a little money to help us, finance the documentary. Once we got done the doc, we just submitted it to a bunch of festivals and just crossed our fingers and hope people would get what we were doing. And luckily, we got. I remember the first one we got in. Jason messaged me. He's like, "Dude, we got picked for a festival." I'm like, "Get out of here! That is so cool!" And we got picked for like I think 30 festivals.
Amazing.
We've won I think at least 10 to 12 awards. We've done a couple panels for the doc. It's been well received. We're really happy with what the documentary's done and what people are saying about the doc. So yeah, we submitted it to a bunch of festivals.
Amazing. And so what was the reception like from the fans and indeed the people at the festivals?
Oh, they loved it. They were just happy to we're just happy to see someone talking about the show because it's such an underappreciated show. That's what we hear all the time.
Amazing.
Such an underappreciated show. It should be on streaming. Why is it on streaming? We're glad you guys are doing this to get it back out there. Messages we got from the cast and crew were just that made it all worth it. At the beginning of the doc, when we started working on this, the first thing Jason and I said to each other was like, if this turns out to be campy and corny while we're doing it, we were just like watching dailies of it. If it seems like it's campy and corny, we're just going to cut and we're not going to do it. Because we wanted to do like you said earlier, a love letter to the people who worked on the show.
Yeah.
And to let them know that there are fans out there that still love and appreciate what they did on that show. Because some of them didn't even know. Clea didn't even know that people enjoy her work on the show.
Wow.
So yeah, that was the goal of the doc. If they're happy with it, then we'll be happy with it. And we hope the fans are happy with it. And of course you're gonna get your negatives from fans out there. Why didn't you have this person? Why didn't you talk about this? Why didn't you do that? And I'm like, we only had so much we could do.
Yeah.
So yeah.
See, I think that's universal for 98% of fandoms, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It seems the fan gene is equidistant with the right to complain, but there you are.
Well, you know me, being an Aries, the first thing I say, and I had to calm myself down and stop responding to people because initially I started responding to people, and I was like, if you don't like it, Doc, go out and shoot your own. Good
Yeah.
luck. Good luck.
Yeah.
If you could do better, go do better.
What I like as well, Troy, is when you did the revisitation in 2018 with the new stuff with Bill Smitrovich, it kind of seemed that almost buoyed by the success of that original iteration of the documentary. And indeed, what I noticed again with the name change, after the Millennium in its kind of second iteration, it seemed that, you could really see that nostalgia for people kind of translating into a kind of appreciation of the fact that they knew you were speaking the same thematic language of the show, so to speak.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
What was the thinking behind revisiting it again for the second version?
So with our initial distributor, we had a 5-year deal with those
Mhm.
guys, Factory Film Studios, and those guys were great. After 5 years, we got the rights back to the documentary, and we were talking, and we knew we had so much extra footage
Mm.
from the interviews because it's interesting. The interviews we figured would be like 10, 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes per person.
Mm.
But man, we would get these guys and start doing these interviews, and they would be 45 minutes, an hour. Thomas Wright was the one of the funniest ones. His was like an hour and 15 minutes. Just so much stuff. He was like doing impersonations of Lance and on set and just a bunch of crazy stuff, man. And we had so much footage. We're like, maybe we should revisit this and put something out. And then Jason had reached out to Smitrovich because initially we tried to get him, but his schedule, he wasn't available. But I guess he heard about the doc, and he ended up being a part of it, as you well know. So we decided, we have all this extra footage. Let's put something else out there because there are some people that still haven't seen the doc. I mean, there's only so much we can do as independent filmmakers. I guess I'm calling myself a filmmaker. There's only so much we can do to try to get it out there because we don't have the budget for these big marketing campaigns, which is basically word of mouth and social media a little bit. But overall, I'm just happy with what's going on.
I did like the kind of the almost very tongue-in-cheek nods to the show and some of its format, and as well, just little things that I thought kind of translated really well. Like, whose idea was it to shoot Sarah Jane Redmond's interview in a church? That was brilliant.
Sarah Jane Redmond.
No way. Hey, wowzers.
Yeah, she when we reached out to her, we were talking. She's like, what would be really cool if we could shoot my interview in a church.
Right.
And Jason and I are like, oh, a church? Yeah, that would be really cool. Gotta get a fucking church. But luckily, the hotel we stayed at in Vancouver, there was a big church right across the street or actually right next to us. And on a whim, we just walked over there one day and they were having an open house. And we walked in and there was some people standing there and we were just sitting there talking to them and they were telling us about the church. And we said, hey, by the way, we're shooting a documentary about the TV series Millennium. And they're like, oh, really? We've had a lot of people shoot shows in here. Supernatural shot in there and they shot a bunch of movies in there before. And we were just talking to them. And after about 15, 20 minutes, somehow they said, hey, sure, you guys can shoot. We'll give you an hour and we'll give it to you for free.
Oh, wow.
So they gave us an hour like on a Sunday. We just had to make it like make sure we shouted them out in the credits.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, we called Sarah Jane and like, Sarah, I don't know how we did it, but we got a church, but we only have an hour. And she came in and she set the chair up the way the chair set up in the shot with the cross behind. That's all her.
Oh, really?
Sarah. Yeah, that's all Sarah. Yeah.
Amazing. After the documentary, like you've got a number of other sort of projects, IMDb credits and stuff. Is this something that sort of spurred you on a filmmaking journey after this?
Yeah, I mean, going through this process and working with the team we had, it was a really positive experience. You never know what you're going to get when you have 5 different personalities working on something like this.
Yeah.
But we all seemed to have one mind when it came to this project and what we wanted to do. So that's kind of spurred me on to working on. We have a couple other things in the pipe right now. We ended up starting a film production company called Resurrection Films because of this. And now we're working on a couple other projects. We just released a campy horror film called Space Rodent, which is out right now. It's pretty funny. And we have some other projects in the pipeline. So yeah, it's pretty much spurred that on. Again, I've never done anything like this before until I did this documentary.
Amazing.
And Jason, although he's a filmmaker in the LA area, he'd never done a documentary before. None of us have done anything like this. So the fact that we were able to put this out there and do something pretty decent, pretty proud of it.
Amazing.
30th anniversary this October for the fall. Is there anything in the pipeline that you can talk about, avoiding spoilers, to celebrate the show? I know that they're doing I think there was plans to do an interview with Chris at the X-Files Museum, but I haven't seen too much kind of forward motion, kind of like celebrating the anniversary, which is a damn shame because it's such an underappreciated show.
All I will say is yes.
Oh,
I'll leave it at that.
okay.
I'm the kind of person who doesn't like to jinx himself. So let's just say I'm working on something, fingers crossed. It's going to be something really, really cool. But that's all I'll say.
Okay. Well, following on from that to an extent, one of the and it touched on what you said earlier about the level of trust that the cast and creatives had in you and Jason and indeed the campaign. One of the things I took away and that I didn't know about the show was the level of kind of the mea culpa from Chris Carter saying that effectively his desire to launch Harsh Realm pretty much killed the chances of a fourth season, which I had no idea at the time.
Yeah, I mean that's true, but there's also the changing guard at Fox.
Right.
The guy that greenlit Millennium had left, and the
Okay.
guy coming in was like, we need to brighten up the schedule a little bit. We need some more comedy. We need this. We need that. And Millennium and Brimstone, another favorite show of mine. Oh, it's
Oh,
Brimstone.
love her. Lovely.
It still hurts. It wasn't fitting what his vision for the network.
Yeah.
So that combined with Chris Carter coming in with Harsh Realm, yeah, pretty much. He's like, I'm pretty much the reason why it got taken off the air, and it is to an extent. It's him, and then it's Fox as well. The change in leadership.
Yeah. I mean, that came across, and it was at the time that, you talked about that being the natural kind of culmination of the Back to Frank Black campaign. It seemed like 2014, 2015, we were dealing with the industry and there was a huge influx of money going into IP and properties at the time. Game of Thrones was massive. The money that was being thrown at hourly television was just obscene huge. And it seemed like, I mean, so at least to my perspective, the time and the moment culturally that you released that documentary, it almost seemed, and with the IDW launch with Joe Harris's comics as well, that if any time they were going to bring the show back, that would have been the moment.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. How much of that serendipitous, Troy, and how much of that do you think happened by design?
I think, we said it from the beginning. It was going to be an uphill battle
Mm,
with this, bringing this show back. We knew the likelihood of it coming back was small,
yeah.
but we still wanted to soldier on and, pray for a miracle. We almost had a miracle. At one point, I mentioned that there was talk about the show, bringing it back, if my little birdie was telling the truth, which I'm sure he was. But he reached out to me and said, hey, there's a meeting going on right now. The executives talking about IPs. One of them is Millennium. But I think there were some concerns. I think with Lance's age
Right.
was a concern. There was concern with the niche element of the show, the cult status of the show. They didn't think it would generate enough interest, which I don't true. Yeah, there was such a missed opportunity back then.
Totally.
I think the doc came out. I think you're right. The doc came out at the right time, but yeah, it's a cult show. People see it as the higher ups see it as a cult show,
Yeah.
and pretty much nothing more, which is sad in my opinion. If given a chance, I think Millennium could have done something, at least close the story.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, last year, I just wanted to touch on that we lost Mark Snow.
Yeah,
One of the things that I took away from the documentary was just how beautifully done, executed, and performed as a tribute to Mark's music was the score. Now, you touched upon the Millennium score being released commercially, but also the documentary score was released. And I think that really, for me, said a lot about how much it paid tribute to that. How much of that was deliberately done? Did you kind of immediately find that that was the right tone you wished to go, or did you want to go somewhere that was close to Mark's original vision?
I'm going to tell you something. I don't think I've told anybody publicly yet, but we had been talking to Snow about doing the music for the doc.
Oh, wow.
But the only thing that hurt us is Mark was such a busy guy. He just didn't have the time. But initially, we were going to get Mark to do the score for the documentary. Years ago, we had run this fan campaign where we're like, create what you think a Millennium movie trailer would look like. And we were like, what kind of prize could we give away? And I called Mark and I said, hey, man, we're doing this contest. We're going to have some fans create what they think a Millennium movie trailer would look like. Would you possibly be interested in creating new music for the winner?
Hmm.
And he did.
Wow.
the person won the contest. They did this great trailer, and we sent it to Mark, and Mark scored it with Millennium type music, but new. So we were gonna hopefully have him do the score for the documentary, but unfortunately he couldn't do it. So Jason knew Matthew Gatzos. They've been friends for a long, long time, and Matthew is a talented musician.
Mm.
And basically, what we said to him was, "We're looking for a score. It needs to be Millennium Mystic."
Yeah.
And that's basically all we said to him. And then he just went and did his thing. And I
Oh.
think he did a fantastic job.
One of the things, like, kind of expanding on that, that I thought you kind of touched on it there, was and I remember at the time hearing about it, was the open invitational, I shall say, to create a title sequence for the doc. And the finished product, I think, is fantastic. Even down to, I remember watching the doc for the first time, and the shot that sold it for me, and this is just me personally, was when he managed to recreate the weeping woman bending over from the original titles of Millennium.
Yeah.
Some of those images were so visceral. Tell us a little about the hunt for that and what sort of submissions you had.
The winning submission was Andrew Shelton.
Yeah.
He's ended up being associate producer on the doc, and he was the guy I told you that would constantly be retweeting our contests. He would constantly post stuff about the show. He would always retweet our stuff, and he was just one of the guys I would always take notes.
Right.
And take notes of people who sent stuff in that was, if I thought it was really good, I took a note like, hey, this guy could possibly do something down the road for us. And Andrew was one of those guys. So when we put out the contest for the opening credits, I remember we got about 7 submissions, and I remember most of them being pretty good. There was a couple we were like, eh. But the minute we got Andrews and Jason and I watched it, we're like, that's it. That's
Yeah.
the winner right there. Hands down, that is exactly what we were looking for.
Yeah.
And doing that moonshot, I think in the documentary there's a part about where he talks about coming up with the credits and doing the credits.
Mm.
I thought it was fantastic. We knew he was the winner from moment one. Moment one.
It certainly speaks for it. And I remember one of the shots that I personally liked as well was the watch disappearing into the water as well. And I just remember sitting there looking at it going, how many fucking times did it take him to do?
It's funny you say that. We were just talking about that the other day. It took him hours to get that.
Really?
Hours. He's like, he was getting so frustrated with that shot. But yeah, it took him hours to get that one little shot. But yeah, he's fabulous, man. He did a fantastic job. It's Andrew Shelton. He's on Twitter. Follow him, guys.
Will do. Will do. And also, you kind of touched on it earlier. You loved the work of Matthew Ingalls there. I do art myself, and I think that what Matthew did, especially with that kind of visceral cover of Back to Frank Black of the book, was really capture the kind of noir element of the show. Was he somebody that again approached you guys from the campaign, or was that organic?
Again, he sent in that drawing that we ended up using for the Back to Frank Black book, and again, I made a mental note. I saved it in my little folder that I had on my my computer. Like, this guy could be someone we talk to down the road. And then when we started talking about the documentary, he's the first person we thought of for art. So I just reached out to him and I said, hey man, would you be interested in being a part of this and doing some artwork? And literally like a couple weeks later, I didn't even say anything. He sent some sample artwork.
Right.
And boom, we're like, he's the guy.
Mm.
And so yeah, so it was really fun doing the documentary because every several weeks or so he would send in some new artwork, and it just got better and better and better. And we still haven't used all the artwork that he had sent us. There's so much more that we haven't used.
Yeah, that's right. You can tell it's a real labor of love what he'd done there, because he'd done some fantastic mashups. I saw one piece he'd done where he'd done a revisitation of Chris Carter as the Smoking Man or something.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's brilliant, just so entirely in keeping with the show. Obviously, 2018, the last iteration of it, I remember that we released a huge kind of almost a box set deluxe edition of the doc, and it had multiple discs. I think the soundtrack was included in that as well, wasn't it, in the last release? If there was to be another release of the doc, what would you like that to look like now? I mean, you spoke earlier about the fact that it's not really readily commercially available, especially over here too much. What does a 2026 version of that look like?
We still have footage that we haven't used. That's for sure. I would love to get more interviews with especially Terry and Glenn and Jim and Kristen. released the soundtrack with it again, maybe an expanded version of the soundtrack, because I think there's still more music out there that didn't get released. Yeah, I mean, I would keep it simple.
Yeah.
Because we had those, like you said, those big packs with stickers and trading cards and all kind of stuff. But I would want to keep it simple. I just wish we could have got O'Quinn and Glenn and Jim, but just due to their schedules,
Yeah.
we couldn't do it.
Well, I was really struck by, I think about, maybe and again, it kind of, you wonder if the Millennium documentary kind of opened a few doors in kind of the cultural significance of this. But I remember seeing that they did a Lost documentary about 2-3 years back that I've spoken to Dylan about, and Terry contributes to that, and he did a recent podcast. I think it was one where he was talking about his cooking, but he even talks
Yeah,
about the role of Peter Watts in that. You probably know the one I'm referring to.
yeah.
But he seems to talk about it with a real affection when he does. He just strikes me as somebody that doesn't really live in the past moment of their career.
You just hit it. When we reached out to him, and I did twice, and both times his people wrote back and said he doesn't want to live in the past as far as his work is concerned. And he was like, he would politely pass
Right.
on the doc. And I get it. I understand that. I understand why he did the Lost doc, because the show changed television, and it was such a huge hit. I mean, I think Millennium changed television
Yeah.
back in the day, what it did and how it looked. But of course, it was a cult hit. It wasn't this huge, massive hit. Maybe one day we'll hopefully get him. I still haven't given up. I'm still trying to reach out to people here and there, but we'll see. We'll see.
I know Glenn did I know you might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, because I remember hearing about it. It was pre-File Fest. Glenn did a Q&A over here, I think, in the pandemic on
Yeah.
Zoom.
Yeah.
And it was a commentary on Curse of Frank Black
Hmm.
at a TV festival. And I was struck by how affectionately he looks back on that, because I remember him saying it was, that second season was pure artistry on their part. Chris had totally left them to their own devices to do the version
Hmm.
of they wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when we did the interview with Chip Johansson.
Yeah.
He was he was so cool. First, he came over to our little. We had rented a house or something to do the interviews, and he came over and he did the interview, and he was like, "What are you guys doing tomorrow?" I'm like, "I don't know." He's like, "Why don't you come over to Fox Live? You can come hang out for a little bit." Like,
Oh, nice.
oh, okay, cool. So we go over there and we're talking to him. We're having lunch. We walk through Howard Gordon's office of
Wow.
Fox. He's huge, Howard Gordon 24 and all that. So
Mm.
we're walking through his office, sitting on his little patio, having lunch. And we end up walking over to where the American Horror Story people are, and James Wong was working on the show at the time. So we got to go over there and hang out with James Wong. And I remember sitting there with James Wong, Chip Johansson, Tim Minear, who, if you know Tim Minear,
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm just sitting there like a fly on the wall watching these guys talk about writing and television and Millennium, and they're talking about Spotnitz and the work. And I'm just like having a surreal moment right now, because Minear is one of my favorite writers.
Yeah.
Like, and we were talking to James, and he was like talking about the show and da da da. I'm like, can we get a camera out real quick so we can get you talking about this real quick? But unfortunately, we didn't. But still, it was so cool.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to ask you the kind of inevitable question there is, I mean, I'm going to preface this by saying I'm a third season guy. I think when I was younger, it was second season. It was kind of all that mythology, the kind of info dump, Hand of Saint Sebastian stuff. As I get older, I found that a lot of the kind of the subject matter and the tonality shift in the third season about the way that it encompasses what starts as fairly procedural and then evolves into kind of taking in a lot of that mythology of year two. I found really that's my jam of Millennium. Troy, what's your Millennium takeaway on that?
Season 3.
Hey, there we are.
That's my favorite season. Anyone who knows me knows season 3 is my favorite season. Especially those first couple of episodes are kind of rough,
Yeah.
because Michael Dugan was or Duggan, I don't know how you pronounce his name, was the showrunner at the time. But once you get to about Sound of Snow, and
Yeah.
from there on, it's brilliant television. And season 3 will always be my favorite season. We're in the minority, my friend.
Yeah, well, I'm very pleased I'm in good company. Anything as strange and kind of opaque in not just 10-13, but in TV as something like Saturn Dreaming of Mercury or 7 and 1.
Yeah.
Some of
Yeah.
those paths, and I almost wonder if they got a sense that with the new administration at Fox coming in, if the writing was on the wall, because there seems to be such an exploration in that last dozen hours of TV or so.
Darwin's Eye is another good one. I
Yeah,
really love that episode. I don't know if they thought the writing was on the wall. I know they knew the ratings were not that great,
yeah,
but I think they thought the show had a chance of coming back.
right.
But again, once Harsh Realm became Chris's main focus,
Hmm,
yeah, and then once there was a change in leadership, it was all she wrote.
right. Do you think that looking back on not just the show, but the documentary, that you contributed in a weird way? If we kind of, as much as I hate to think now that hopefully I'm wrong, but if the moment for a revival of the show is a niche project, as the Suits would say, has passed, do you think the documentary in kind of forms a Rosetta capstone on the story of Millennium?
That was the hope. Yeah, that was the hope. And like, if nothing else happens with the show, we hope people can go back and look at this and say, "Hey, this was a great series. It had a lot to say. It deserved to continue on." And if, like I said, if nothing happens, this is the feather in the cap for the
Yeah.
show. That's what we hope.
Well, look, thank you so much for coming to talk to us today about the documentary and about Millennium in general. Do you have any projects, any social media links you want to plug at all?
Yeah, all you need to do is just look up After the Millennium, and you can find all our socials that way. Like I said, we do have a couple projects coming up. I don't want to jinx them, but one is definitely a documentary, another documentary, and we also have a couple film projects with Resurrection Films that we're working on right now. So yeah, we got some pretty cool stuff coming up, man. So thank you guys for watching the doc
Pleasure.
and putting the word out there about the doc. There's still people that hasn't seen it, that doesn't know it exists, which
Right.
is sad, but you know, I appreciate what you guys are doing and your love for the show, Millennium. Like I have love for the show since day one, and I'm glad I was able to do this and put this out there, and people appreciate what we did.
Thank you so much. And if there's anybody out there listening who hasn't seen it, go check it out.
Hot for TV.
Thanks once again to Troy and my co-host on the episode, Liam. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, as it helps people to find the pod. Look for Too Hot for TV on Instagram, TikTok and YouTube at Too Hot, 4 pod. That's Too Hot, 4 pod for the latest updates and additional content. Next time I'll be joined by Martin, and we're going to be jumping into the expanded universe of Dark Shadows. But until then, I've been Dylan, and this has been Too Hot for TV.
Hot for TV.